Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I'm your host, Teri Wellbrock, and always smiling and so excited to have these beautiful guests come join me. So today I have Frank Rogers Jr., PhD. He is spiritual director, speaker, retreat leader, and author, as well as co-director and founder of the Center for Engaged Compassion. And I'm going to hold up for all you watching the video. Cradled in the Arms of Compassion. I'm telling you, when I opened this package, when this book arrived and saw the cover, again, I cried because it's so beautiful. It's truly the most beautiful book cover I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of books, and it really struck me. So welcome, Dr. Frank.
Thank you, Teri. It's just a joy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm just so excited to talk to you. And gosh, there's so many questions I want to throw at you, but I guess let's start with the book and your inspiration for putting it out into the world.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm an abuse survivor myself of childhood sexual abuse, and my early years was just tortured and ravaged by this. But like many sexual abuse survivors, it was so covered in shame that I kept all of that secret. I mean, I just suffered in silence, suffered in secret until it just erupted inside of me. And, flashbacks started, penetrating my days and my nightmares and impulses to cut and rage and all of these just, post-traumatic stress symptoms just erupted in me in my young 30s. And it tried to kill myself and ended up in a mental institution. And that really began my journey of recovery, trying to find I call psycho-spiritual resources, both to maintain my psychological stability and emotional regulation, but also kind of to nurture my spirit, that sense of vitality and meaning and hope that gets us out of bed in the morning. And over the course of some 30 years, really kind of found a path of recovery. And I'm a professor of spirituality at a interfaith school of theology, and I've been teaching these practices, and I never really thought that I would tell my story out into the public or write a book about it. Until a few years ago, my little sister, she was 49, and all of a sudden, this homemaker up in rural Northern California, a mother of three, and her oldest daughter's getting ready to have a baby. She was going to become a grandmother, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, flashbacks just started erupting within her. We were raised in the same family. We were raped by the same man. We had never talked about it because we don't talk about those things in our family, but it just blew up inside of her. And she thought everybody was trying to kill her. She was suicidal. She cut herself. She was inundated with nightmares and would hide in the closet and just shake and tremble, and ended up in a mental institution. And the only person that she trusted in the world, she thought everybody was trying to kill her, was me. And so I drove up to Eureka, California, and saw her, and she was just a shell of herself. And she started telling me what was happening and all the flashbacks, and started talking about that. And then in the midst of the conversation, she said, "Frank, you were like this once. I mean, you were in a mental institution. You were harassed by rage and by nightmares and cutting, and you almost tried to kill yourself. And what did you do to get better?" And, here she was, she's in an institution, she's emaciated. And I just, said, "I got good help, Linda, and we're going to get you good help, and it's out there." And she said, "I hope so. I really hope so." And about 4 weeks later, she took her own life. And I was just absolutely soul crushed for so many reasons. I mean, I was the one that she had reached out to, and I was her big brother. I was the one she always turned to. I was the one she even asked, "How do we get help?" And we were doing everything we could. We even had a treatment plan in place for her, but it just wasn't enough. And so I was just haunted. And as I went through the months and months of my own grief and processing the loss of my sister, I realized I need to answer her question. I need to write a book that is what I wish I could have communicated to my sister. So the book is really the story of my recovery. It's the story of what I did to get better, to deal with the harassment and horrors of childhood sexual abuse, to become a functioning, recovered person. And it's too late for her, but I offer it to other survivors. If anyone is in need of looking for some directions in trying to go through this journey of recovery, I hope this will be a helpful resource for them. So that's why I wrote the book.
Yes, thank you. Well, just my heart hugs yours, and thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for the courage it takes to put your truth out into the world. My nephew, who's 26, died by suicide in November,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, the impact that it's had on particularly my children, and being there, I flew back to Ohio where they are, and my nephew lived with his family, and just being at that funeral service, and the being witness to the pain, it was heart-wrenching. I mean, life-altering, really, for so many of us, um, to have lost Matthew. Um,
Yeah, it's so soul crushing, isn't it? I mean, that somebody is that despairing. I mean, that there just
yeah,
feels like no way out, and the only place where there's some peace, maybe, or some comfort, or some escape from the horrors is just to end this life. And yeah,
right,
it's utterly tragic, and affects us all. Everyone who's close to it, it impacts us. Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Well, I know we had talked a little bit before I hit record that about IFS. So now you're, if you could sit down and talk to your sister, you said what you put in this book, is it a combination of um, spiritual work as well as doing IFS, or what was it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's a combination of doing the spiritual work and the psychological work, and those overlap anyway. Absolutely. But for me, I had not heard of IFS, internal family systems, until I was well down the road of my recovery. But the things that I did discover was one, that we have this essence within us, no matter how traumatized we've been, no matter how beaten down by life we have been, there is still this core, we call it a true self. There's this spiritual essence inside of us that is the source of our resilience. It's the source of our hope. It's the source of our clarity, of our compassion. And it's really the kind of the secret ingredient in being able to heal from trauma. And then the other really important thing that I discovered was that we don't always live, of course, out of that deep essence. We're so often harassed by the emotions, the passions, the angers, the fears, the shames, or the impulses to binge, or to cut, or to distract ourselves in work, or the fantasies. All of these, interior movements, all of these psychic phenomena within us, they kind of dislodge us from our deepest center. And usually when that happens, we try to manage that stuff. I shouldn't be so angry. Let me kind of push that away. Or in spiritual practices, oh well, let's just let it go. Those are poisonous emotions, and let's just try to dispel them. But they have a tenacity. I mean, for me, they would not go away, whether through spiritual practice or some kind of self-help regimen. I would just still be inundated by these huge passions and emotions. And what I learned was, well, what if we tried to befriend them instead of fight them? What if they're there for a reason? We weren't born that way. So what if they emerged in some way along our journey in response to what happened to us, and they're trying to protect us, perhaps, or secure something that feels absolutely essential to our well-being, and maybe they're rooted in pain and in deep suffering that is aching to be held and cared for and tended. And so when I started turning to my inner world with curiosity and compassion and listened to what was happening, those movements and passions relaxed, kind of paradoxically, and the pain underneath them surfaced so that it could be met with the care and compassion that was healing and restoring. And that became a spiritual process for me as well, and finding the spiritual realities that just would hold the wounded parts of ourselves with compassion and tend to and relax these inner emotions. And so I developed what I call the compassion practice, a compassion approach to self-restoration. And those, it turns out, are the core principles of internal family systems. So that when I started teaching it, people said, hey, have you ever heard of internal family systems? It's a trauma-based therapy that is saying the same things. And so I met Dick Schwartz, and we became fast friends, and was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I discovered, essentially the same thing. So I got certified as an IFS practitioner, went through IFS trauma therapy, and it's an enormously restorative and liberative process of trauma healing. So
Oh,
couldn't speak enough of it.
I for sure, I said I had told you I had interviewed someone on the Healers of Hilton Head series on the show, Christine Knight, and I actually went and sat with her and had sessions because on more than one occasion, and I just so incredibly empowering, really, because when my mom died on my birthday last year, March of 23, and I had to keep flying back and forth while she was in hospice along her end of life transition journey, and I hadn't flown alone since I was 15 years old, since panic attacks had started. And I used to have to be like, oh, I'm getting on a plane, I got to down these Xanax, but I have shifted away from all of that. So I thought, all right, kiddo, man, you've got to hop on that flight and you got to go see your mom. So let's do this. And if I utilized IFS and like the parts work and little Teri and having her on my lap. And so it was just, again, and I got through those flights wonderfully. Did some somatic. It was kind of an interweaving of a bunch of different stuff, but boy, did I pull in that IFS stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a liberative process, and it's so non-pathologizing. It's not like, oh, there's something wrong with us because we have anxiety or rage or these images in our head of our abuse. I mean, it's like that, those are parts of us that are trying to get our attention, that want to be held and tended to and relax and help us access our deepest resources when we have compassion for ourselves and these parts of us. And like you did with the anxiety, it's just such a beautifully empowering, resilient approach to life, not just healing from trauma.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought up too, going back a moment, the point of our core essence, like at the core of everything is this beautiful light that is us, the soul, the spirit, this energy, whatever you want to label it, call it. And right, it's all this muck, right? All this ick that's gotten like, but it's still there. And sometimes when we can't see it, right, it's when we can sit, like you said, in compassion and say, why is this part of me screaming for attention?
Yeah.
And how that can then just burst through. Like I just see the visual of the light just like starting to come through and embrace it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like what we would do if a friend of ours came and said, I'm really struggling with anxiety or with rage. We don't say, oh, well, that's a horrible way to be. And you really we would have compassion. Well, let's talk about, where does that come from? What's underneath that? And so it's tending to ourselves with that same, concern and care, not demonizing ourselves or pathologizing what's happening within us. And when we do that, yeah, we access, it's like a pilot light of the soul. It's this spark of the divine, the Buddha nature within us that Buddhists would call, or the image of God within us. It's this spark, this essence, this spiritual reality that is our greatest resource for life when we live out of that space.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. And you just spoke to me on it. I haven't talked about it in a while, but it reminded me when I had been involved in two horrific bank robberies by the same perpetrators within 3 months of each other. And in the second one, the assailant who had held the gun to my head in the first robbery pulled the trigger in the second robbery and murdered my coworker. But I followed his prison journey, right? And when, for whatever reason, he popped into my head, it had been a few years since I'd checked up on him. And I got into the system, couldn't find him, went into mild panic, got a hold of the prison, and they said, oh, yeah, he died 2 weeks ago of natural causes. And so I just remember like falling to my knees and just crying and being like, I hope you found forgiveness. Like, I hope you found whatever it is you needed. But when I've talked about him before in my forgiveness journey with him, how I likened it to is we were both born these innocent little creatures, right? And these little lights and these, like you said, in the image of God, however you want to word it. And somewhere along our journeys, I chose my path and he chose his path, which was darker, but I didn't know his journey. Again, not to justify his actions, but I don't know what he went through. And so when I was able to get to that point of just looking at him light to light, regardless of his choices and what journey he had chosen, wow, that just shifted everything on my forgiveness journey with a lot of my transgressors.
Yeah, I mean, and it shifts us internally, like you said. It's such a freer, more spacious place inside of us to be able to get to that place. And like you say, he wasn't born a killer. He wasn't born, robbing banks or with that impulse. So something happened to him along the way, trauma or poverty or whatever it might be that just beat him down. And like you say, it doesn't justify the actions, it doesn't legitimate them, but it does open compassion and understanding. Like, oh my gosh, if I had been in that journey and grew up in those circumstances, I very, very well may have found that to be the attractive way or a place that felt strong or whatever. And so we could have compassion and understanding and hope that he finds healing, even as we never justify what he did and legitimate that, and even have to keep ourselves safe and the vulnerable safe and keep him away if he's dangerous. But we could have that compassion, which is so internally freeing and expansive for us.
Oh, for sure. Like I just remember feeling
Mm-hmm.
like a literal weight just like
Yeah.
lift off of me. And truly, I felt a shadow, like a darkness pass
Mm-hmm.
behind me and out the window. I don't know if it was him, like that, like I release you kind of thing. But I just again remember thinking, oh, just such a freedom. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. In your body, just the breaths, you just like, oh, this is home bay. This is coming home to myself. This is who I am. And I don't have to carry that anymore. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. So now, do you work with folks? I know you're the co-director and founder of the Center for Engaged Compassion. Do you work with people in like group settings? Do you do one-on-one? How do you like help others along their journeys?
Yeah, I do all of the above. I'm a professor, and so I teach people in my classes to be able to practice these kinds of self-compassion practices of restoration and kind of spiritual vitality. I do the Center for Engaged Compassion. We also lead retreats and workshops. So we work with groups and help them kind of discover these practices and processes to be able to tend to our own wounds and the inner cacophonies within us. And I also offer one-on-one. I am a certified IFS practitioner. I'm also what we call a spiritual director or kind of a soul companion, certified in that process. And so I work with people one-on-one, helping them on their own journeys to tend to our inner worlds and our relationships to be able to live out of that deepest sense of self and agency within us. So I do all of the above, right?
Yes. Well, beautiful and awesome. And I say yay to that because and so it's not just folks in California. You can do this wherever.
Yeah, yeah, with Zoom, exactly. We can talk from coast to coast here. And yeah, I meet with people one-on-one and offer workshops and retreats even online. So yeah, people actually all over the world, right, can take part in our courses and workshops and retreats and one-on-one work. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. That's very cool. Um, all right. Well, gosh, I'm just so caught up in the whole compassion part of it. And I know you probably want to talk on some other subjects. So I certainly want to give you an opportunity to touch upon anything that maybe you're feeling spiritually, intuitively moved to talk about.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, compassion is the heart of it, really, and like you said, the cover of that book, is the Pietà. So here's kind of this maternal face of the sacred in Mary holding the dead body of Jesus, and for me, that's just the image of compassion that we can hold those who are suffering, the wounded ones within ourselves, and there's just something incredibly restorative about that. And I believe that my sister, her dead body is actually held in the sacred arms of a compassion that has nothing but understanding and care for what she lived through. And so part of my own recovery journey was kind of aligning myself and accessing that sacred source of compassion that holds us in every moment of our lives, in the shadows and in the joys, and being aligned with that spiritual reality is extraordinarily restorative and rejuvenating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have to show you just really quick. I'm going to move my camera for just a second. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but my mom, when she passed, said, before she passed, Teri, I want you to have, she's very, very Catholic, like daily mass, rosary praying. And so she said, I want you to have my statue of Mary. So over in the corner is the statue of Mary holding
Oh,
baby Jesus.
yes, right in the very corner back there. Yes.
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 But
See that.
in that, underneath it is a picture of my oldest son who was very, very sick when he was a baby. And so I've been praying for him a lot and sending him a lot of love. I told you I did some ho'oponopono. And so I've put that because, and so every day when I walk by, I put my hand like on Mary's head and little baby Jesus. And I'm like, please be with him. Like, please just be with him and hold him in your arms. I ask her that all the time. So when you say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're just speaking to my soul.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And it's just something profoundly transformative that, this maternal presence of compassion that holds all of us. Now, I experienced something similar with my sister as I was going through the grieving process. And, part of it, I just couldn't shake. I was so haunted by the fact that she died alone. She was in her car. She had taken sleeping pills, and just how absolutely bereft and forsaken she must have felt. And so part of my process was meditating and working with whatever my feelings were, the angers, the wounds. And I prayed with that image, and I just imagined, why am I haunted by this scene? And in my kind of meditation, I just imagined myself being in the car with her and just holding her, kind of like being her pietà, right? I mean, holding her as she passed from this world to the next, kind of letting her know in the spirit world anyway that she wasn't alone, that she is held with care and compassion. And out of that, I think, spirits are restored in some mysterious way when we're able to offer that kind of compassion for one another.
Yes. May I read what I had
Sure.
told you from your book? That had just like the timing of it, the synchronicity. Oh my gosh, it was so beautiful. So, and it was, so I flipped open to this page and it was the Pietà. And it says, 1, a representation of the Virgin Mary holding and mourning the dead body of Jesus in her arms. 2, maternal compassion cradled with care, or cradling, I'm sorry, let me try that again. 2, maternal compassion cradling with care one who is suffering. That's the one that had me like stop crying. 3, a big brother holding his deceased sister's story nestled within his own. And that, when I read it, I said to myself, I'm wondering if he lost his sister. And so, wow, just wow. That's all I have to say. It's so
Yeah.
powerful, very
Yeah.
powerful.
I lost her, and that was the reason for writing the book. Not very few people know this, but my original title for the book was going to be My Sister's Pietà, because I was sort of like, the book itself was me holding her and her story. I tell her story as well as telling the story of my recovery. It's like I'm going to hold her with compassion, even as after she had taken her own life. And but the publisher and my wife and others said, not very many people know what a pietà is, and so why don't we call it Cradled in the Arms of Compassion? You can have an image of a pietà, and you can describe the pietà, but that theme runs itself throughout the book, just the ways in which, a sacred compassion that holds us with maternal care could be so healing,
Oh,
in the people in our families.
yeah. Well, gosh, if we could all do that with one another all over, right?
Wouldn't that be it? I mean, absolutely. Yeah.
What a world what a shift would happen.
Exactly. That's why we founded and I co-direct the Center for Engaged Compassion. That's kind of our mission. It's let's promote more compassion in the world. Compassion for ourselves that restores us when we're driven and impassioned, and compassion for others, to just treat people with kindness and curiosity, and instead of demonizing and polarizing folks. I mean, what a different world it would
Oh,
be. Yeah.
yes, most definitely.
Mm.
Well, again, I feel so blessed to have you here chatting with me. And gosh, we've already been going quite a while. Um, so how do folks connect with you, and where can they find your book?
Yeah, the book is on Amazon, and you can connect with me through the Center for Engaged Compassion, just .org, or my email is frogers at cst.edu. That information's all in the book as well. And yeah, I'm happy to connect with anyone who's on the journey and would like to speak with a companion like we are doing here. So I'm so grateful, Teri.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to take a picture of myself out on the beach with the book or with one of the dogs, with the book. People always like to see the doggos. And I'll put it out on all my socials ahead of the interview. But yeah, again, just such a gift to my own soul in the moment. Thank you for writing it and putting your truth. I've been writing my own memoir for 10 years. It's quite a journey. Yes. Yeah. Putting our truths out there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, I mean, it's hard and it takes some courage. I mean, especially, in our cultures where we don't talk a lot about the trauma and tell these stories. Certainly with sexual abuse, it was just, that was part of that's part of what killed my sister, was that we just kept this stuff secret. We never talked about it. And so the more of us who tell those stories and say, no, it's okay to talk about it. In fact, talking about it and telling our story is a path towards healing. The more we can do that, the more we can spread healing into our world. So more power to you, Teri, as you continue to write.
Oh, thank you so much. I know it's every day I have it on my to-do list. Right.
Right. Exactly.
And then I do laundry and, all the other stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff comes up. Right.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's just been such a delight to have you here. If there's any final words of wisdom you want to leave folks.
Yeah, well, just trust your body, trust yourself. I mean, that what we feel for a reason, and all of it could be tended with compassion. And compassion really is the road to restoration, both internally and in our relationships. So
yes,
yeah.
I say amen to that and hallelujah. All right. Well, thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Teri. Deep delight to be with you.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us today on the Healing Place podcast. And remember, until next time, be gentle with yourself. Thanks. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. Teri Wellbrock here. Just wanted to thank you again for being a part of this healing space and my hashtag Hope for Healing journey. Thank you for sharing, liking, inviting others to join, listening in. You've really helped this show blossom. It has now been downloaded in 136 countries and is in the top 2% globally out of 3.2 million shows, which is just amazing. And it's all because of you and your tuning in and inviting others and sharing and liking and loving. And your reviews on Apple really help too. My goal is to hit 100 5-star reviews by the end of the year. And I am closing in on that. So if you are listening in on Apple or Apple Podcasts, please go and rate the show and leave a review if you absolutely love it. And I would be most appreciative. Also, if you would like to receive my monthly Hope for Healing newsletter, please be sure to go to teriwellbrock.com. It's TERI, just one R, WELLBROCK.com. And I have a gift to send you for signing up for that monthly Hope for Healing newsletter. Plus, there are many other resources listed on that page, including a resource library. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.